Good afternoon, everybody, or good evening, good morning, wherever you may be. Thank you for coming to Change Agents Tina Andrews. We are so excited to sit down after 21 years and have this conversation with all of you as our guests. And I know that you have read her bio on Eventbrite, so I won't belabor that. I will just say welcome and thank you to the fabulous Miss Tina Andrews.
Hi.
Hey, how are you? How are
so
you?
Nice to see you. So great to be here.
After 21 years.
21 years, the last time we saw each other.
Oh, yes, Writtem By. Love it, love it. Yes, so that is the magazine that broke 1,000 printers, I think. the highest selling magazine at the time, issue of that magazine at the time.
Mm-hmm.
At the time you were working or had just finished working on Sally Hemings for CBS.
That's correct.
And then went on to become the first African-American writer to win a Writers Guild Award.
An original long form.
Yes.
The first African-American, male or female, to win the Writers Guild Award in long form.
And then you also won the NAACP Image Award for that work.
And then went on to win the NAACP Image Award for the book.
For the book, about your experience. Right. So that's such a milestone. And so I want to start from there and move forward. I want you to touch on that because there have been recently a number of historical properties that got adapted for film. And, there's this perception, I would say, that screenwriters kind of just take liberty. They don't care about historical accuracy or anything like that. Can you talk about your process? So we've got Sally Hemings, we've got Queen Charlotte, you've got a couple other historical or based on real historical
Jackie
people.
Kennedy, Coretta Scott King,
yes.
I tend to do, I refer to myself as being a historical real.
Yes, and yeah. your book on Little Richard. So for those who might be concerned, for those who might be interested, explain your process. Because, we're not going to speak for all writers, but explain your process because you've gotten, visits from people who shouldn't have your address on certain projects because they're upset about you dealing with it. What is your process for writing history into entertainment?
Well, that's what it is. You actually hit on it. History and entertainment. I am not, I remember CBS saying this to me about Sally Hemings. Look, Tina, we're not called, CBS University. We're called CBS Entertainment. So do whatever you do that will make it interesting and entertaining for people. So here's my process. And you've actually been witness to it at, one or two times in our, in our friendship. That which I have that is in the historical record, I use. If I can find it, and I don't care if it's just one sentence. I mean, there's a situation with Charlotte where there was just a line out of one of the documents I was looking at the British Library that talked about her brother being very good looking, having these very well-shaped legs, which was a big deal back in the day. Men showed off their physicalness with their legs. So he was supposedly very good looking, stayed constantly in the company of men, and was the Grand Duke of Mecklenburg. Charlotte's father had died, so her older brother is the Grand Duke of Mecklenburg. So we're talking, a guy with a little piece of change and he looks great, who should have potentially been looking for a wife. and he was disinterested in that, died never being married, and also died of syphilis. And I thought, okay, how many historical projects have you done, Tina, where generally a guy like that was a gay guy, hiding it, sleeping around with a lot of different guys. Right. So I thought that's probably what's going on, because certainly the next youngest brother, who was also supposedly terribly good looking, Charles, Prince Charles was married at 18 years old. And here we've got Grand Duke Adolf, 26, which is unheard of for somebody to be that old.
That's
oh
old.
my
That's
God,
right.
You were ancient. And they're looking for the line of succession, you see? So I put that together. So that is how I will take and marry drama or storytelling to some facts. So where I have the facts, I use them. If I have a gap in the sequence, then I'm going to create what took us from this dot of information to the other. And that's where people began to refer to me as someone who connects the dots of history dramatically. Yes. And I do that.
Yes. So just FYI, that is not an electronic background behind Tina. That is one minuscule part of her library. You know, this woman does research, and I know because I was there for some of it, you know, the research that goes into what you do. And I would say most screenwriters who are tackling this don't take it lightly and do try to find as much actual in the record stuff actually in the record to utilize, right? So, and you know, you're telling us how long it takes. There's no way in the world. So I just need to dash that right now. This whole concept that writers just kind of come in and write what they want and, you know.
And make it all up and that's
right. It takes a long time. Sister's got the books behind her, again, 1/10, 100th of her library. So
I have 3,000 books at last count, like 3,100 plus books, because if there is anything written on any subject that I'm doing, I get the book. And if I have to buy it at full price, I'll buy it full price. If I get it on, you know, Amazon and, you know, in the used books, I'll buy it there. I have bought books on, you know, what is it, halfpricebooks.com. They all know me.
Anywhere you can find it, right? PDF, download.
Yeah, thank you. I will do that. And I end up reading those books. I really am a bibliophile. And now, the thing is, though, I really am going to hate it when something happens to me and I pass on and these books have to go to somebody. Oh, the books are highlighted to death. You know, I'm going to use this. That's highlighted in yellow. I might use this. That's highlighted in green. So I do.
No, that's valuable stuff. All that marginality and underlining.
Oh
we want
my
to
God,
know. Yeah.
And I have little stickies that, you know, that I put on so that I can find the page quickly.
Yes.
And I enjoy that. So I have, listen, on Jefferson, I had there were probably 78 to 85 books on Jefferson. On Queen Charlotte, because there's not a lot specifically written in book form on her, what really helped inform her character and the rest of the people at well, there wasn't Buckingham at that time, it was St. James's. King George bought Buckingham House for her later. I could find everything on King George's family. And then they would mention, you know, what was going on. So to give you an idea of how I have created a sequence, it turns out that in 1764, I believe, the worst snowstorm in the history of London happened. So it's like 24 inches of snow, which, you know, back then, there are no snow plows. Horses couldn't get through the streets. You know, people couldn't shovel out. And it gave me a great excuse to snow in Charlotte in Buckingham House, and George got snowed in at St. James's. And I did that to give a wonderful opportunity for a love story that was going on between Charlotte and a man who genuinely loved her. You know, George and Charlotte were in an arranged marriage, so they had to learn to love each other.
Right.
But the two people who were kind of involved, you know, which was Charlotte and Johann Christian Bach. Well, they were kind of stuck at Buckingham,
right.
And the snowstorm, you know, kept him from being able to leave, and so
things happen, you know.
yes. So I do things like that. There is someone else who's been very helpful, who may or may not be on this webinar today, and that's Denise Gilman.
Denise is here.
Denise Gilman, Denise the Ring Gilman, who knows Anna, the Grand Poobah. She has researched and sent me information, and in fact done so much editing with me on these projects. No matter what happens with this material, I am so grateful that I do have friends who have said, hey, did you know that this happened back in whenever the time period is, you know, this was happening with the farmers, or this was happening, there was a disease that struck, you may want to be able to use that in your story. So I do have help.
Yes. No. So we're talking about the process of using books.
Mm-hmm.
I want to ask you, again, as I'm sure people are wanting to know this. When I first met you, you were working on the book, Sally Hemings, you know, The Struggle to Tell the True Story. So you were writing the book after the fact about your experience. Why, since then, have you been adamant about doing your research and writing a book of your own source material? Why do you choose to write books first before the script?
Well, quite frankly, there are a couple of reasons. You know, I higher power dictates every single thing that I do. And there are very often stories that come to me from that, in that otherworldly way. They come to me in the form that they should take place first. So very often, the book comes to me first because I find myself with stories that are 40, 50, 60 years. So in order to cover that, you can't really do that in a film. You would have to cut into the story in some way to do a 2-hour version. And it's never satisfying to me if I try to do a whole story in 2 hours. You're going to inevitably leave something I feel important out, which is why I so love the limited series form, because then you get to tell your story, in a much longer way. But I've only had things come to me in a limited series, very, very rarely. Things come to me as books, or they come to me as plays. And I will tell you why I have been adhering to that. It is because I then can control the storytelling. It is very important for me to be the person that brings forth the story that I want to tell. I cannot start them as scripts first, because they're not going to end up what I wrote.
Right.
It's a very collaborative, Hollywood is a very, collaborative place, and that's all well and good. But unfortunately, it's just sad, but screenwriters are short shrifted. I mean, for some reason, Hollywood feels like, oh, great, so we got this book that we're doing. I have been brought on to do that, which is why I no longer do, I'm not writer for hire or do adaptations. Some wonderful book you're given, and then you're told, hey, you can just, you can deviate from that book. Just make up something and fix this. And we want to see this, or change the race of the character or the gender of the character or whatever, change it. So then you do all of that. You turn in the first or the second draft or whatever. And you get a call from your agent saying, hey, they're just going to pay you off and bring in writer B. Huh?
Okay. Yeah.
Writer B comes in. So Hollywood thinks that, it's a bolt of filmmaking. And, you just screw on one writer, and if they don't work, you screw that writer off and you bring on. But at the end of the day, you get screwed. That's the deal. That's what happens. when I'm writing a book or if I'm writing a play, I am telling the story that I want you to know about. And then no matter what happens to it after that, at least I have in some fixed and cemented way, the story I wanted you to know. And I'm proud of that. And so if it takes me, as in the case of Charlotte, if it's, 8 to 10 years before I'm able to deliver that story to you, so be it. Prince Harry had proposed to Meghan. And the entire Charlotte story comes back up again because they were saying, well, she'll be the first biracial royal. And then there was an entire contingent that said, no, there was a queen of England who was of color. So when people said, oh, no, and back and forth, suddenly I'm wondering, why is my book selling all over?
Right, that's right. And that leads me to another thing. Yesterday, Essence Communications, Essence Magazine, first they had the Black Women in Hollywood ceremony on Friday. And then yesterday they had something called Hollywood House. And I think you might have, if you saw, Adjoa Andoh was on one of those segments, talk with 2 other British actors talking about their experience. But one of the other interviews was with the actress Aunjanue Ellis. And she told Corey Murray, the entertainment editor, that she originally wanted to be a writer, not an actress. And she was kind of led into acting. And she said that she didn't get encouragement for being a writer. Actually, it was not only not getting encouragement, but out and out discouragement, disparaging comments and whatever. So she just happened to, during college, get into theater. Can you talk about that, your transition? Again, so we know that Miss Tina, as I've said, has played everything from Henrietta to Coretta and a lot in between. I don't know if that's in the bio, but we remember her. We remember her from the Brady Bunch, Conrack, Roots, Henrietta from Good Times. Yeah. So we have seen you. That's how, at least I, growing up watching those shows, came to a Black girl on TV. Oh my God, and then just seeing you over the years doing all these, getting more and more roles, Sanford and Sanford Arms, and so.
And Days of Our Lives. Yeah.
How can we forget Dr. Valerie Grant? The first interracial love story on daytime television. So it is not like you switched to writing because you weren't doing well acting. You had a solid career at a young age, I would say, right?
And that transition was not easy, but but my father was responsible. Just to let you know.
All right, George. and how did he?
I'll tell you, he was furious with me. I did.
Really?
He was furious. He said, I sent you to NYU. You were going to be a dancer, and then you figured out you were too short to be a dancer. You weren't going to be able to be in the chorus, so it forced you out front. And I'm going to tell you that if you keep up what you are doing as an actress, eventually someone's going to hand you a role where you will have to be naked, and we will be embarrassed. Everything you do has a ripple effect. It ripples back to your family, your church, your friends, and I don't want you to have to do that. So he did say, I would much rather you call me and ask me to send you some money than to do a role that's going to be embarrassing for all of us. All right, well, yeah, I did that a lot. Hey, Dad, I can't pay my rent. Hey, Dad, my car note, and Dad sent the money I'm telling you, every time. But I still took a part in a movie opposite Jodie Foster. And I was excited to play because it was my first grown-up role. And as I said, Jodie Foster, it was Gary Busey, It was Robbie Robertson, from the band, who was in it. It was Tim Thomerson, Meg Farr. It was an all-star cast. But we were all playing carnival strippers. Now, I never got naked. Thank you, Jesus, because God forbid I should run for president one day. But
hey, it's worked for.
Yeah, well, yeah, okay. I know where you're going with this. But we were all playing carnival strippers. And so they had us, in a lot of clothes so we could have things to take off and throw out into the audience. But my father was furious. So he sees the film and he says, this is not even this is the most undignified role that you have ever done. You're showing your legs, you're showing your thighs, you're being, sexually alluring. This is not you. This is not what we sent you to NYU to be or to do. Why are you doing this? And I said, there are not that many wonderful, empowering, dignified roles for Black women in Hollywood. This is kind of what has been offered. And I'm trying to not play kids. I was at a certain point in time, I was like 35, still playing 15. It was almost
Davy Jones.
Right. Thank you. It had almost gotten, because I'm short in stature. And so that went on for a very long time. And my father said, you need to take your career more seriously. You need to take that talent that you have as a writer more seriously and write those dignified, empowering roles for Black women that you do not seem to get, because you can't stay on this path. So he said, I'd rather you struggle to be a writer than to struggle to be an actress and embarrass us all. And I will tell you, Sharon, that at that moment when he said that to me, I was ready to listen to him. Generally, your parents say stuff to you and you're like, what are you kidding? I own a house, I'm grown. You can't tell me what to do, kind of thing. But I, at that moment, was ready to hear what Daddy said.
Yes.
And so I began to write and take my writing seriously. And the way I was able to transition successfully is because I had been an actress of some note. I was able to then call directors that I had worked with and producers that I had worked with, and who, they took my call. I could call people like John Erman, who had used me 4 or 5 times, the most significant role that I did for him being Roots. I was able to call people and say, hey, could you take a look at this and at least give me some notes, or what do you think? And that sort of got me started. And the thing that put me over the top was I had been in Roots, and I sent my script to Alex Haley, and he mentored me as a writer.
Yes.
And that led me to my first successful screenplay sale at Columbia Pictures.
That's fantastic. So you mentioned the sort of the blackmail your father used. That's still happening today. People are up in arms about WAP and Cardi B and what have you, and so we are in this. We constantly find ourselves in this cycle. So over the 20 years since Sally Hemings to now, what are some of the same old things that you can think of? And then what are some of the, things are kind of shifting here?
It's funny, it's a combination of both of those. Same old, and things are shifting. The thing that has happened is that hip hop was of some significance to the change. People started realizing we do not have to go to major record labels in order to get our product to the masses. The other thing that happened is obviously social media. If you can bypass a gatekeeper, my suggestion is please bypass the gatekeepers, because the agencies are looking to make money. And they're only going to do it if you put out material that can be, mass marketed. They're not necessarily into niche marketing. So the problem earlier on in the 20 years, say the first 10, was that there was not a lot of change for women of color. I mean, there was still, I mean, very few African-American women would even be on writing staffs, let alone being able to do something significant. Then that, you know, Selma, and we had, you know, Ava DuVernay, and then it's been this slow process. Shonda Rhimes was extremely lucky in that she came out. She was also mentored and helped along with that first, with Grey's Anatomy. And she's been able to become a powerhouse. So once, you know, they always tell you, the person kicking down the doors is the one with a lot of broken toes. But you make it easier for people behind you. So I have said, I have gotten really worn out from having this machete and trying to chop down trees and weeds and all of this, because I can see there's an ocean up ahead and I'm thirsty and need water. And I keep chopping and chopping, not paying any attention to the fact that if I turn around, I would have created a road for the next Black woman who wants to drink a water, you know. So, so in terms of the same old, I think that as long as we have a studio system in place that only wants to do the mass marketed kind of stuff, then things are not going to change. We now have 500 channels. So we've got a place for you to sell pretty much anything. If you want to write, you know, if you want to script faith-based, there's a place for that. If you want to do action, there's a place for that. If you want to do just historical drama, there's a place for that. There is somewhere for your product. My whole thing is, do not think that in order for you to get in the game, you have to do what I was told I had to do. And quite frankly, it worked then. And it probably still works now to some degree. And that is that you have to write the comedy, because you can write about anything now. And by the way, you can get it to anybody because we got social media. Yeah. So that's how things have changed and how they have unfortunately stayed the same.
So I want to backtrack a little. You wrote Sally Hemings, and you mentioned in that Written By article that not only did you get a strange delivery on your private home doorstep with your unpublished address, from someone threatening you about what you were doing, but you were also at some event, and in comes the, you know, Klan, not dressed in Wamsutta, but how dare you defile Mr. Jefferson's, you know, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And yet in 2021, you are writing and executive producing the story of Viola Liuzzo, who was a civil rights activist, a white woman who said, you know what, all of y'all are wrong, and I'm not going to sit around and be complicit in my privilege. I'm going to go down and do something about it.
I'm going to march. Yes, right. I'm going to say something. I'm going to help out. I'm going to be out, you know, front and center. And she was murdered by the Ku Klux Klan. So that story I have found fascinating. I'm doing it for Byron Allen, Carolyn Folks, and Entertainment Studios, and we go into production in the fall. I found the story. It's based on someone else's book, Mary Thornton. I found her story to be fascinating because she didn't have to do any of that. And I'm telling the story in a very unique way. Yes, it's Viola's story, but it has been written through the eyes of her best friend, who was a Black woman who was 50 years old at the time. And they met each other, and it was like love story. They hung out. They was, you know, Sarah taught Viola how to cook. It was a whole thing between them. And she did tell Viola, don't go down to, don't go to Selma. Don't do it, because it's going to be dangerous. And yet she did. And she was killed. And we have her story because Sarah told it so many times. Also, there was the trial of the Ku Klux Klan members where no one knew that any of them were ever going to be convicted, much like a lot of people were holding their breath this week, thinking, perhaps Derek Chauvin would not be convicted. And they weren't for 2 trials. And then finally they were. So I love stories like that about the underdog. I love stories that feature women who maybe it feels as if they might not be empowered, but they empower themselves and then become selfless. Yes, scared to death, but they get out there and do it. And the young Black man that she was in the car with, transporting marchers back to hotels, the young Black man that she was in the car with, who was 19 at the time, is still alive. And I'm just so happy that we can also tell part of his story as well, because he had to get on the stand after being threatened by, Klan members and everything else. He had to get on the stand and tell that story. No, they rolled right up, rolled their window down, pulled out the shotgun and blasted her in the face. And if he had not pretended like he too had been shot and was killed, they would have killed him. Fascinating story. I love those kinds of stories. I will also say that this is the one story where I did not have to create a lot of that drama. It was the trial itself. I would liken this story to the trial of the Chicago 7.
Wow.
Yeah, that's what this is.
So it's 10 minutes to 4. If anyone has questions, please put it in the chat, and please, before you type your question, type in capitals question so that I can easily see what questions are. And please, yes, make it a question, not a comment. Thank you. So you're talking about how you got into that story. And it's interesting because you also co-wrote, I don't know if that's the right term because you didn't work with him necessarily, but the CBS miniseries on Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis. And so
I love telling the story because told Les Moonves, are you sure you didn't forget I'm a Black woman?
Right.
You just handed me this white historical story. That's right. On this first lady, and I'm thinking, right. Okay.
Right. You sure?
So he said, no, I love how you write history. So that's it's something that you should be a part of. And I enjoyed working on that, as well. The problem for me became I am very invested in doing stories that have a very strong Black component, even if they are not.
Yes.
If they're not Black stories, you got to have a really strong Black component for me, because I have given my own self a mandate. I am about the forward movement, yes, of women, but it's really, I'm more comfortable with telling stories that come out of the African diaspora. That story, I also have some news on the Charlotte Sophia front, but those are the kinds of stories that I am very attracted to. So poor Jackie, she was very privileged and she had a lot of opportunities, but I kept searching that story, looking for a Black component. And what I found led me to me doing Coretta.
Yes.
Jackie sort of went to Coretta's door, and there was this sort of weird thing that happened the day of Martin's funeral. And I thought, oh my God, at least I can tell that part of the story. Didn't end up in the final cut, but at least I was able to tell that story. Mrs. King and I became close. I loved her. And she said, you got to do my story. Yes. You have to do my story. So I actually didn't care what happened with Jackie. I was very happy that it was successful, but I felt more honored and privileged, to have been given this gracious embrace by the mother and wife of the civil rights movement, Mrs. King.
So perfect. Coretta King, in that article that 20 years ago and written by, and I asked her for a quote. And I don't remember it verbatim.
Here it is.
And can you please let everyone know what she said? Coretta Scott King, whose birthday is in 2 days, had to say about you?
Gosh, I don't want to cry, okay. But she said, and it's a headline here, she said, Tina impressed me as someone who had great integrity. I could entrust her with my life story. Coretta Scott King.
Right. So please understand, I could entrust her, not I couldn't trust her. I could entrust her. E-N-T-R-U-S-T. And so, you know, that is major for writing the kinds of things that you write. Yes, sorry, didn't mean to make you get weepy, but you know, that's no small thing, because we've seen in the industry where there are adaptations about historical figures whose family is still alive get upset at the treatment of the material. And so for this woman to say, I trust you, that's a biggie. And so I just want to say for all Black women, thank you for that integrity.
Thank you.
Because it makes it that much easier for the rest of us, or I would hope it would, to have that integrity and say, you know what, no, I'm not going there. This is what I've found, and this is the story that I'm telling. And
well,
so
I wanted to tell her story very badly. And once again, I know I keep going back to Southampton Cultural Center because I love those guys, and I love, certainly, again, I know I keep mentioning
no, that's great,
Kirsten, but I came to her and I said, I really would like to put on a one-woman show here. And, you know, she's always, Tina, do whatever you want. So I'm holding auditions because, you know, Coretta sang. She was, and not many people know this, but, you know, she was an opera singer.
Opera singer, yes.
And I'm auditioning actresses. And I am not finding what I want. And I was on my way out of the theater, depressed. And the artistic director, Michael Disher, oh my God, I love Michael Disher so much. So Michael Disher says, well, darling, what's wrong with you? And I go, I'm lamenting, oh, you know, and 5 women came in and they're all terrible and blah, 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 blah. I'm going on and on and on. And he's got one hand on his hip. And he goes, I don't understand. Why aren't you playing Coretta? And I rear back, well, you know, I'm directing and I've written it and I'm going through, you know. And he said, uh-huh. So I'm putting excuses in front of it. He said, Tina, you're the right age to play her. You're the right complexion to play her. You've written it. You should challenge yourself to play her. Now, this is me, who you know is terribly verbal. I go, and I start thinking. So he said, just think about it. He said, or you can go through this audition process until a cow comes, because you'll never find what you want because you ought to be doing it.
Right. I
got in my car to drive back. I'm out on Long Island. I missed my turn off. I said, why is there still water on the beach? Where am I? Driven. I don't know where I was. Thinking about what he said. Because for him to say, this is a man I have a tremendous amount of respect for. His opinion, very valuable. And I said to myself, what is scaring you about playing her? And then that night I did my prayer work. Mrs. King, you know, unfortunately, you know, passed away in 2006. Same year my mom died. And I said, Mrs. King, should I do you? I said, because if I should, you're going to have to come through me at every performance. And she did. She showed up for me as an actress, much in the same way that Sally Hemings showed up for me in the writing of the Sally Hemings character. That's when you know things are going well. When the characters that you are writing about find a portal to get to you, to your fingers, to your brain, to the computer keys, to whatever it is, and the thing starts writing itself. You know, you can almost take your hands off the keys and they're like, girl, I got you. I got you. and and that happened with Coretta. And so, yes, I did that one woman show. And I will probably do it again. I don't know when, but I'm not going to be able to give that role to somebody else because I've just put my, you know, stamp on it. And so that's where we are with her and that. And I would thank her every night. And yes, guys, I sang all those songs that I had written in the script that I said, oh, me who can barely carry a tune. I did, you know, His Eyes on the Sparrow every night. And it didn't matter because people were so caught up in the drama of it that generally the applause started the moment I left the stage, walking through the audience, singing that, the applause, you know, started then, which was good. So it covered up whether or not I could or couldn't sing.
Yeah, you got to stretch yourself. So before I start reading some of the questions, my final-ish question. So you talked about working with the Southampton, is it the Southampton Cultural Center?
Yes, yeah, SCC.
So along the course of your career, you were not always here physically in Hollywood. And you've often said you felt that time that you detoured to spend time in New York, sometimes you regret it. How do you feel about that now? And do you still regret it, or what value have you found value in doing that theater and art
and books
and what have you?
Oh, you know, I've completely changed my tune on that. In many ways, you got to remember, it's like running away from home. I had gone through a divorce. You know, I'm someone from a family where almost all of the relatives stayed married to their spouses until one spouse died. And my parents had been married 46 years. And so there was a part of me that sort of felt like a failure because I could not sustain it. And so I kind of felt like, you know, I'm running away from home. Then there was another part of me that said, yes, and I'm going to join the circus. So the circus being, I'm going to go back to the writing that I absolutely loved, which was theater. So that means writing musicals and writing plays. And I also, because I became ill, my love for art returned because I actually believe to this day that I was in the white light, and whatever it was, which will be in another book, but whatever it was that presented itself to me, asked me if I had done everything I enjoyed doing while I was here. Now, this is while I'm in surgery for the tumor that was in my spine. And I said, you know, I would have really loved to have painted more. I really enjoyed doing that when I was doing that. Keep in mind, there was 30 years between the last time I painted and when I picked up my brushes again. And that entity said to me, oh, then you should go paint. And I heard something say, Tina, and it was my doctor calling me, and my spirit was hurled back into my body, and I was in recovery. And I had been told that if you can wiggle your toes, I would have gotten everything out and not nicked a nerve, which would have left me paralyzed. Keep in mind that in going into the hospital, you know, death looming, if I nick a nerve, you'll be paralyzed. You're not going to have it. I mean, that was a very bad time for me. And I was not quite prepared to go. So when I said, are they wiggling? And he said, yes, your toes are wiggling. 6 days later, I walked out of the hospital and had my brother drive me to a Michael's. And I bought my art supplies and all of that. And I took up my brushes and my sculpting and all of that all over again. So there is that part of me that says, if I had not been in New York, if I had not had the guidance and the acceptance and the support of people like Kirsten and Michael and all of my friends who would come and sit around my big table and we all sit up and edit each other's material and all of that, I don't know that I'd be doing what I'm doing now. I have said that I had regretted it because I said, did I give away my film and television career? Well, what I'm finding amazing now is every one of those projects that I wrote in New York is now under some option, or is about to become some film, or is about to become some television series. So I'm glad that I did that.
Yes, love it. So there's no wasted experience.
No, none.
So the first question, what was your process for writing your first biography, and what was your process in adjusting it for film?
Okay, so the first biography was Frankie Lyman, and the adjustment to film was that somebody said, "Excuse me, he was married to 3 women. So instead of you doing that linear story in that way, why not, change the focus and have it be the 3 women talking about their experience with Frankie Lyman?" And also what that did was my mandate of doing projects about Black women primarily. So I said, well, that just feeds right into that. And then also there was so much music involved, in the material. But what I first wrote, which was called Frankie's Song, was basically a linear story, and it was told from his point of view. And that changed by the time we got to Warner Brothers.
Interesting. You kind of answered this. Did you ever write a Coretta Scott King script?
I did.
And you performed it in the theater, right? Or is that something else?
No. I performed, the Coretta Scott King play, I performed, yes. But there was also a script.
Oh, okay. So there was that script for CBS that didn't get produced. Yes. So yes, she did. It did not get produced. Even though Coretta said, "I trust you with my story," somebody didn't.
Somebody wanted, let's put it this way, somebody wanted things in that script that the King family was not going to be happy with.
Right. Okay.
And I was very mindful of what she did and did not want in the material.
Yes.
But, powers that be wanted things there. And so the whole thing just went away.
Right. Yes. So
it went away in that form. And then I was able to do all of
Right. What was your experience like working on Why Do Fools Fall in Love? And how did the final project compare to your vision?
Oh my God, to this day, that is my favorite project that I worked on. To this day.
And why?
Oh my God, I had a blast. I was brought into every phase of the filmmaking. The writing, I loved working with. Okay, let's start at the beginning. I was there for all the writing. Okay, then they said, we're gonna try and do this. Tina, can you give me 3 months? This was at the time Bill Gerber was a senior vice president. Can you give me 3 months? And so I'm thinking, okay. Now keep in mind, I moved into Malibu. I got a mortgage. I got stuff. I'm thinking,
what am I going to do for 3 months?
3 months before I can do, because in that such a short period of time, you can't really do anything else. And sure enough, I get the call. Yeah, so we've greenlit this movie, and I'm like, oh, Hercules, so I'm thrilled. I turn in a draft, and everybody's thrilled. So now it's time to get a director. Well, my experience, quite frankly, which is why I'm going to be directing from this point on, is that my experience with directors has been it's been tentative, it's been arduous. The reputation I got was that Tina will have a director for lunch. Because inevitably they come in, it's a film, so they are credited with having all the sight and the vision and all of that, and they'll just take your script and turn it into something else. Well, I had that experience on maybe 5 other movies that did not get made because there was this thing that happened. So Gregory had just come off of Selena.
Gregory,
and knowing that I have a tendency to be this person who, that's just how it is with me and directors. They were really kind of circling their wagons around Gregory. And I really wanted the project made. So I get this call saying, how about we set up this dinner before we hire anybody? Why don't we set up this dinner between, you and him, and call me. I want to know, how how it goes and blah, blah. Not realizing he had been told the same thing. So we end up at this Mexican restaurant. Started out in Santa Monica. Okay. We ended up at this Mexican restaurant in Santa Monica. He's very tall, like 6'7". I'm like breathing in, I'm 5 feet. So he would do these jokes. So he said, Tina, I'm looking for Tina. Oh, there you are. Oh, it was short jokes a go-go. I just liked him. He was funny, and we both loved tequila. So it was tequila shots and strawberry margaritas, and we're on. So he said, look, let's ditch this place and go. There's another place I like downtown. Let's go there. There was this wonderful, creative, artistic marriage that took place. So when the evening was over, I get on the phone and I call Bill and I said, Bill, it's Love Story. He's great. And he said, oh, wait a minute, my phone's beeping. So he said, hold on. So he said, oh, it's Greg on the other line. I love her. I think she's great. So that he made sure that I was there for casting. He said, look, you're an actress. Read what these people were bringing in, because I'm sure that they would prefer to actually have an actual actress to work off. I read with everybody who came in for that piece. He insisted on me being on the set. And the nicest thing was him giving me a chair with my name on the back. No writers get that.
That's right. That's right.
You don't get the high back, not the little one.
That's right.
High back. It was glorious. And I have not had that experience again. So yeah, I loved everything about it. And in terms of the net result, I got to tell you, there is nothing that I can personally find wrong with it, because I was having too good a time with those actresses who, by the way, did some of the best work of their careers, I felt, in that piece. And Lorenz Tate, who started out not being able to even do the splits to doing the splits every 5 minutes in terms of the choreography. I loved it. I loved it.
That's great. That's great.
Yeah.
Another question, do you write your novels and scripts longhand?
Listen, sometimes it depends. I get tired of sitting in one place and I may want to move out to the patio or something. It's a combination of longhand. And then by the time I take the longhand work and put it onto the computer, that draft becomes a second draft, because then you find things in the longhand version. You say, oh, no. And then you'll key it in. So it's a combination.
Okay. Question, are you still going to do the play version of Queen Charlotte in London in the future? If so,
yes.
Who are the actors and actresses?
No, can't answer that, because I'm going to be very busy doing dun, 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 dun. Finally, I can announce to you guys, it's going to be a series for HBO Max.
What is?
Charlotte.
So, yeah. Just wanted you to clarify. So Queen Charlotte's story will be a miniseries for HBO Max.
It will be we're looking to do it as a series. So it'll be seasons. We keep in mind the story is 60 years. So
right. There's at least 6 seasons.
When she married him, she was 17. We got a long time to get her to the end of her life.
Congratulations in the chat.
Thank you.
We're shouting congrats.
And it happened, my birthday was Friday. And so the news came on Friday, which is why nobody could find me Friday or yesterday, because I was too busy partying.
Yeah. Well, I hope everything was still intact when you got home.
Yes, everything. Oh, okay. Yes, everything was intact. Oh, yes, and we will talk about that later, because I can kill you.
What?
That's going to be 50 more pounds added on to me behind.
Another question. Oh, I love this one, because I didn't ask it. Can you tell us what impact, if any, that writer-poet Maya Angelou had on your career?
Okay. Somebody wrote that who knows.
Yeah, let me. Yeah. Oh yeah, that's Uncle Ricky.
Knows.
That's Uncle Ricky.
Of course, Uncle Ricky. Uncle Ricky. Oh my goodness. Maya Angelou. Oh, don't let me start crying here, because he was there, so he witnessed it. I was about to interview Ambassador Andrew, it's funny, I have to still call him, Ambassador Andrew Young or Mayor Andrew Young, because Dr. Maya Angelou told me, darling, whatever you do, do not call him Andy unless he allows you to call him Andy. That's for his friends. Maya, it was like, what, 6'1"? And like I said,
Whatever,
when I breathe in, I'm barely 5 feet. So there's this great scene in the movie Network where Peter Finch looks up and said, I have seen God. And that's how I felt when she stood up and gave me the instructions for meeting Ambassador Young. You will call him Ambassador Young, you will call him Mayor Young, you will call him anything else, but you will not call him Andy, unless he gives you permission.
That's right.
And she also said to me, my dear, you have to continue to tell our stories in this dramatic and entertaining way in which you do. Because what you will do is you will send people to their computers to find out what is and what isn't, but you will have given them food for thought.
That's great.
Well, I burst into tears. I have yet to recover. Every time I think I have yet to recover. So true story. Eric was there. So when I wandered over to the table, he said, what is wrong with you? And I said, I have seen God.
That's so funny. Yes, and we know God is a Black woman.
Yeah, there you go.
That's another conversation. No.
By the way, into that story is that Ambassador Young and I were having lunch, and he said to the waiter, wrap all of this up and send it up to my office, please, which was, the restaurant was on the ground floor. When we got up to the office, and I'm still calling him Ambassador Young, he said, Andy, Tina, Andy.
You have been granted permission. This is a good one. Who are some of the artists who have inspired you as a painter?
Oh my God! There are a few. I love Tony Scott's work. I'm just enamored of Tony Scott.
And she does everything.
As a sculptor, she has influenced me too, and so has Woodrow Nash.
Yes. Oh, I love Woodrow Nash.
That work is. I don't know if you guys, but there's a piece. Maybe you can see it behind me. I don't know if you can or not, but there's a piece somewhere.
Right.
Around. There are 20 pieces around this unit. Yeah. I also love
one with a red dot.
I'm sorry.
One with a red dot on it.
Yes, there is one with a red dot that's going somewhere. Gee, I wonder. I have also been inspired by Barbara Bellata, who at one point, I think she's still on Long Island. I know that they have a gallery in Florida. So there are a few people, but I guess in terms of old school painters, it would be Jackson Pollock. It would be Willem de Kooning. It would be Franz Klein. It's a lot of those. It's a lot of those guys.
Yes. Great. Let's see. Congrats, Danita Jones. Congrats, Karen Jordan. Just fantastic. Charles Reese. Congrats. Donald Peebles. Congrats.
Everybody that knows I've been on this for 100 years.
Everybody. Oh, Sharon, you're doing great, girl. Thank you, Uncle Ricky.
Ricky.
Congrats all around. So
I'm sorry, there's one person who's not here to say congrats, and that would be Marion Ramsey, who starred in Police Academy.
Yes.
Who passed away on January 6th. And that's the tragic news that I have for this year.
Yes.
But other than that, Marion is here in spirit, because she would say, girl, keep going. In fact, I probably am drinking this wine because if Marion was here, she'd say, girl, come on, let's just have another glass.
That's right. So yes, we also hold space for the spirit of
Marion Ramsey.
The funny, sweet Marion Ramsey in this room. Thank you, Marion, for your spirit, your friendship. To Tina, who then, spreads that friendship onto all of the other people who have met her. It's how I got into Hello, Dolly on Broadway and then the national tour. Marion
did not want to repeat having done that role as Ermengarde, and she called the David Merrick office and said, "You guys have got to see a singer-dancer by the name of Tina Andrews." And sure enough, they called me. Can you imagine getting a phone call from the then David Merrick office?
Yes.
And being told you're going to play Ermengarde in the Black version of Hello Dolly, starring Pearl Bailey and Cab Calloway. That's how I began my entire career. So thank you, Marion.
Yes,
thank you,
yes,
Marion.
yes. We raise a glass. We want everybody to be able to. We want everyone to be able to go and see the Oscars.
Yes.
In a decent amount of time.
Yes.
So we are going to bid everyone adieu, but not adieu, excuse me, but not before we toast the fabulous doll, Tina Andrews. Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Thank you for your presence.
One is you're no one without best friends, and those are best friends. Like, where are you, Denise? Girl, I see your name. Pop on up here.
Hello.
So we just want to thank you. We just want everybody, Charles Reese.
Charles, how are you, honey?
We want everyone to please start your.
Thank you. So don't make me cry. You know this is not waterproof mascara.
Stop it. Hush. So I'm hoping that everyone is able to undo themselves. I changed the setting.
Oh, wait a minute. Kirsten, you're here too?
So we want, is that the Kirsten you were speaking of?
From Southampton Cultural. I've been talking about her all night. Oh my
Kirsten.
God. Hey, girl.
Hey. So you know what? We have lost Chadwick Boseman.
Yes.
We have lost Cicely Tyson.
Yes.
We have lost people and countless other people over this past year. Not only just because of the life cycle, but because of the negligence, frankly, of someone who shall not be named, who did not take a pandemic seriously. And I believe in giving people their flowers while they are here. And so, again, if we can just raise a glass to Ms. Tina Andrews, happy birthday. Happy birthday. Cheers.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you. Thank you. Oh, Donald, hi, how are you? Oh my goodness, everyone is here. Thank you so much for sharing this with me.
So thank you for coming, everybody.
Get it together today.
And we will see you all in the, on the streets.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Everyone, thank you.